Dan, a cool dad, returns home from a liquor run in the midst of his own party, while he tries to close a deal that he believes will save the world. He gives the liquor to his science-loving daughter, Muriel, so he can focus on his deal. Emmy wants Dan to be present for his own party and their marriage, but Dan is focused on his goal and disregards Emmy, causing her to feel abandoned. While everyone is watching a live soccer match, a flash of light illuminates the field and a deafening boom is felt worldwide, even in Dan's living room. On the pitch, 50 advanced commandos descend from the sky and spread out on the field. Their leader, Lieutenant Hart, is a battle-hardened woman who informs the spectators that they are from future and fighting a war against aliens who invaded the Earth. She tells further that they seek help from them. Fast forward 1 year later, a worldwide draft has been implemented, and Dan is now sleeping on the couch. Fallen heroes are honored on screen, including the deceased fighters who sacrificed their lives for the cause. Muriel is plagued by nightmares of being taken away. The next day, Dan is teaching a biology class, but his students seem disinterested and unmotivated. Frustrated, Dan decides to ask his students what they're passionate about, and only one student named Martin raises his hand to talk about his love for volcanoes. The other students express apathy towards learning, believing that life is ultimately pointless. In response, Dan tells them that the future is in need of more scientists, and that their education is crucial to making a positive impact on the world. However, his thoughts are interrupted when he receives a message on his phone asking him to confirm his draft status. Following his evaluation, Dan discovers that he meets the qualifications for the draft because he has already died in the time leading up to the invasion. He is fitted with a device on his arm that will enable him to time jump. It's revealed that Dan served as a squad leader in Iraq 15 years earlier. With only 24 hours to prepare, Dan goes to Emmy's workplace. Emmy informs Dan that his family can be kept safe with the help of his estranged father. However, Dan harbors resentment towards his father for abandoning him and his mother years ago. Despite his initial reluctance, Dan visits James, who has gone off the grid and doesn't trust the government. When Dan asks for his help, James rebuffs him, insisting that he never wanted to be a part of their lives. This infuriates Dan, who has always longed for his father's presence, but James explains that he only would have made things worse for Dan and his mother. Upon arriving home, the protagonist delivers some unfortunate news to his family, but assures them he will return soon. Afterwards, he heads to a training facility where he becomes friends with a scientist named Charlie and a fighter named Orion, who is returning for his third draft. They undergo basic training, which includes lessons on shooting and first aid. They are also given a detailed explanation of how time travel technology functions, with the time link being likened to two rafts on a river that moves between two fixed points 2022 and 2051. They are unable to travel to any other time period, such as just before the war. Finally, the trainees are resting in the barracks. Suddenly, an alarm goes off and the trainees are called to leave immediately. Although they were expecting 7 days of training, they are informed that the future cannot wait for them. They gather together and activate the time link, which appears like a cloud. As they are being absorbed into the future during a soccer match, there is an issue with the output coordinates in the control room, causing the group to appear in the sky above the intended location of Miami Beach. As a result, many of them fall to their deaths upon landing on a building, while a few manage to survive by landing in a nearby pool and swimming to safety. Dan quickly gets out of the water and checks his gun, before going to the edge of the roof to view Miami in ruins. The surviving members of the team are unsure of what to do, but they are contacted by a colonel who informs them that the city has been overtaken by white spikes. As a result, the military has decided to bomb the area completely. The team's objective is to rescue a research team that is currently trapped in a laboratory. Dan, who has military experience, is put in charge of the team by the colonel. Dan leads the team through the city, giving them instructions on how to move safely, but they witness death and destruction everywhere they go. As they are slowly getting to the building, they see a lot of soldiers around them that have been killed in action. Finally, they get to the building and enter it. All of a sudden, they spot the science team, who are all dead. The colonel asked them to retrieve all the copies of the research and to hurry, because if there are bodies around, the white spikes will be back. The team hastily gathers all necessary supplies and begins to make their way down the stairs quietly. However, one of the team members hears a noise, and when he looks up, they finally come face to face with the white spikes, the aliens that have taken over the city. One of the white spikes shoots a spike from its tail, killing one of them. The team immediately opens fire on the white spikes, but their bullets do not seem to penetrate the aliens' thick skin. The bullets do, however, slow them down as the team makes their way down the stairs and towards an exit hallway. Unfortunately, many team members are killed or captured by the aliens along the way. Dan stays at the back to defend the team since his bullets are ineffective. He attacks the aliens with a fire axe, but it proves to be relatively ineffective as well. Fortunately, Orion comes to the rescue and kills one of the creatures. Then the team runs down the streets until they find a tank coming to rescue them. But white spikes completely destroy the vehicles, resulting in several team members being killed in action as they attempt to flee while defending themselves. The airstrike then commences, and the team, which is now down to 7 members, does their best to escape the bombings while being chased by the white spikes. In a tunnel, Cowan and Nora are both injured, and a raptor is soon to drop its bombs. To delay the white spikes and allow the rest of the team to escape, Cowan and Nora stay behind and shoot at the aliens. They sacrifice themselves, and the rest of the team barely makes it out in time with only 5 members remaining. One day later, Dan wakes up beside Charlie at a military base in the Caribbean. They soon after meet Dorian, from whom they find out they were the only 3 who made it. Dan is then summoned to speak with Romeo Command, who he soon learns is Colonel Murray Forrester, his daughter, and he is taken aback. She grew up to be a scientist and she's the lead researcher in the Air Force, which she created herself. Then she shows Dan a recording of a female white spike, which looks different from the males they fought in the city. The female is more aggressive and rare. The males will die to defend her, as they care about the survival of their species. The military has been using a toxin to kill the male white spikes, but it doesn't affect the female. Murray needs Dan to join the team and capture a female white spike for further study. During their helicopter ride, Murray tells Dan that the white spikes appeared out of nowhere one day, coming from northern Russia and spreading around the world. However, there are no signs of their arrival on Earth, such as crash sites or vessels. When Dan asks about what happened to their family during the time he was gone, Murray brushes it off and suggests they don't talk about it. Upon arriving at the white spike nest, they find that the military has already cornered a female white spike and is preparing to capture it in a cage. With the female white spike captured, the team now has a chance to study it and find a way to defeat the white spike invasion. Murray and Dan return to the lab, where they start examining the white spike. They discover that the toxin created to kill the males is not effective against the female. They also find out that the female is pregnant, which means that there are more white spikes on the way. The team realizes that they need to find a way to kill the female and her offspring before it's too late. Murray and Dan work together to come up with a plan to kill the female and her offspring. They decide to use a modified version of the toxin that will be lethal to the female and her offspring. Soon, many more aliens overrun the base and attack, leading to another ferocious battle. The time on the jump link is about to expire, and the female white spike breaks free. The female attacks and causes the bridge to collapse with Murray on there. Although Dan tries to save her, she lets go so that she and the female can die while Dan and the surviving draftees return to their present year. Upon awakening in 2022, Dan finds himself clutching the vial of toxin and urgently informs Lieutenant Hart that they must mass produce it and send it back to the future. However, Hart delivers the disheartening news that the portal is currently down, making it impossible to return. Fortunately, Charlie, who also managed to make it back, is by Dan's side. Finally returning home, Dan is overjoyed to be reunited with his daughter Murray and embraces her tightly. Next, Dan visits Dorian in a bar, who also made it. He agrees on helping Dan find a solution to stop the war from ever happening, and to find out when the white spikes arrived. They take the white spike claw that Dorian has around his neck and go to see Charlie, who analyzes the claw and sees it has volcanic ash on it, but from China, not from Russia. Dan can't understand how volcanic ash from China ends up in Russia, and Charlie asks him if he knows of any volcano expert, which he does. They end up in Dan's biology classroom, where the trio asks Martin how a creature from Russia can end up having ash from China under its claws. Martin then explains it has to be from the Millennium eruption 1,000 years ago, because you can still find ash from that eruption deep inside the ice in northern Russia. Dan leads a mission to Russia with Charlie, Dorian, a few surviving future soldiers, and his estranged father James to prove his theory. The team finds a crashed alien ship at the Academy of Sciences glacier on Komsomolets Island. They debate telling the world about the problem, but decide to end the threat right then and there. Once inside, they realize that the white spikes are not aliens themselves, but rather bioengineered organisms possibly used as a planet-clearing weapon or cattle by another alien race. The team injects several of the dormant white spikes with the toxin. This kills those injected but wakes the others, and most of the team is killed. Terminally ill with cancer and wanting to die on his own terms, Dorian remains behind to blow up the ship with C4, and the explosion kills all but one of the white spikes. Dan and his father track down the one female that has escaped, leaving them and Charlie as the team's only survivors. They split up, and shortly after, Dan sees the white spike start running toward his father to attack him. However, James has managed to make a trap, so the white spike bites a dummy, and James starts shooting it from a distance. This time, however, the white spike really starts going for him, but Dan manages to hit it with his snowmobile just before it manages to reach James. The two then shoot at it, making it retreat backwards so that it falls off an edge. They figure that it isn't dead, and they are right. Suddenly the white spike appears from nowhere and hits them. It shoots Dan in his leg and goes for him, and both Dan and James manage to take out its eyes as it gets close. Dan injects the toxin into its arm, but the white spike bites its arm off, stopping the toxin's effect. It tries to go after Dan, but James cuts his hand to save his son, go after the smell of his blood instead. James, who doesn't want to lose his father, then jumps up on it and stabs it with Dorian's claw. Finally, he picks up another dose of the toxin and injects it in the white spike's mouth and kicks it off a ledge, killing it once and for all. They lay down on the snow in exhaustion. Content knowing that the war is averted and humanity is saved, Dan brings James home to meet his wife and daughter, determined not to make the same mistakes that Murray had warned him about from her future. Subscribe our channel for more amazing explanations. Thanks for watching.